Hi, everybody. Hi, Joy. Hi, Tali. Hi, Mia. Lots of happy faces here. Hi, Danielle, Donna, Julia, Yakira. Wow, everybody's here. Daphna, Danielle. Look at this. Sylvia.
I think I got it now.
Okay, I'm gonna share a screen
I
here.
tried to call you because I couldn't get in, but now I'm in.
Okay. Okay, I just shared a screen. Is that good?
Hello?
Try and silence.
Hello? Hi, I'm trying to listen to Bravinder Shear.
Can I make a request that everybody
Okay, bye. You want to listen to it? Should I
themselves?
send you the link? I'm from Bravinder's. Red Devara sends it to me.
The host can
I'll
mute
send you the
everyone.
link. Okay.
Yeah, I'll try and do it. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can do that. I can only see 1 second. Let me see if I can mute all. Okay. Great. Okay. So I hope everybody is good. 1 second. Let me just. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? Can people hear me? Okay. I want to first of all say hi, everyone. Really great to see everybody here. And what we're going to do today is try to start looking at the topic of chipazon, the topic of speed of redemption. And maybe this will seem a slightly strange way to get into the topic, but we will hopefully presently just see how central this idea is. So let's dive right in, and we're going to be looking at, if we look at the first source, matzah zu shanu ochlim al shumma. This matzah that we eat, what's it for? Al shum shelo hispik b'tzekam shel avotenu la'achmitz, ad shenigla aleihem melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu ga'olam. The bread of our forefathers, or maybe better put, the dough of our forefathers, didn't have time to rise until Hashem, Melech Malchei Amlachim, revealed himself to them and redeemed them. As it says, "V'afuta batzeka she'yotzu miMitzrayim ugot matzot ki lo chametz, ki gershu Mitzrayim v'lo yachlu li'itma'amea, v'gam seida lo asu lahem." They baked the dough they took out of Egypt as matzah cakes, but not chametz, because they were expelled from Egypt and they couldn't delay, and they had also not prepared food for themselves. Okay, now, this is a really interesting situation. Apparently, matzah is the first, what we call fast food. If I can borrow a marketing phrase from Rav Menachem Leibtag. And we came out in such a hurry that the bread didn't have time to rise. But 1 minute. This is very strange, because if I ask all of you, and they all know the answer to this question, when you make matzah, and from the moment that how should I say it, that the water hits the flour, how long do we all have? Right? How long do you have to have? 18 minutes, right? We all know that. Are you telling me that they didn't have 18 minutes from the time that they didn't even have 18 minutes? They couldn't delay even 18 minutes. In other words, the dough must have become chametz. What's going on here, right? Really, the bread didn't have time to rise. Like, what? They came out of Egypt in less than 18 minutes. So first of all, that's one bizarre thing. The second problem with this is if you look at source number 2, because in source number 2, what does it say there? We don't only eat matzah because we came out so quick. Even the previous night, we ate matzah. The night before we left, we ate the basar of the Korban Pesach, tzli eish, roasted, or matzot, al morim yochlo. We were already eating matzot before we came out. So there's something here about the speed. It's not just that matzah is apparently because we came out so quickly. We were already eating matzah before we came out. You know, maybe I'll say this even more. If you look at the bottom of the page, source number 4, where you'll see it talks about, let's go back to source number 2. Sorry, one more thing. Number 2, source number 2, Pasuk Yud Aleph. V'kacha tochlu oto motnechem chagurim na'alechem baraglechem u'makelchem biedchem v'achaltem oto b'chipazon Pesach hu Lashem. And this is how you should eat the Korban Pesach. You should have your motnechem chagurim, your belt on, ready to go, your shoes on your feet. You should have your staff in your hand and eat it in haste, hurriedly. It's a Pesach hu Lashem. In other words, it's not only they were already told before they went out there was going to be a hurried affair. They were told before they went out, eat it quickly, right? This has to be rushed. In other words, the rushing, how should I say it? The rushing, the speed is by design. It's not by default. It wasn't an accident. It was the way it was meant to be. And if that's true, so what is the role of chipazon? What is the role of this speed? Because it's apparently very, very much part of the plan. By the way, the last piece, just to establish this notion of speed as being a very central theme, is take a look at source number 4. Okay? Motnechem chagurim mezumanim laderech, says Rashi. And here we're going to add another feature. Chipazon, says Rashi, doesn't only mean speed. He says here, lashon behala umehirut. It's not only speed, it is a sense of panic. Behala, it means a sense of being, in a state of disarray. David had to run, and he's running away from Shaul. He had to escape. In other words, we have to escape. And if you know the story there in Malachim, that's talking about when Aram hear the sounds of war and they decide to run away. There's a sense of panic, a sense of disarray, but also a sense of speed. And I'll finish this introductory notion of speed with the last bit of Rashi. Pesach hu Lashem, hakorban karoi Pesach al shem hadilug. Why? What does the word Pesach mean? So Pesach means, literally, as we say in English, to pass over. Except clearly Passover was done by whoever translated it that way was very anglicized and very, very sedate. Yes, sedate, that's the word I'm looking for. What I mean by that is, right, look at how Rashi says, how korban kaloi Pesach al shem hadilug v'psicha. It's basically about the notion of leaping, right? Leapfrogging and psicha, jumping. Sha'Kadosh Baruch Hu medaleg Batei Yisrael, God jumps over Batei Yisrael mibein Batei Mitzrim, the kofetz, right? He's jumping mi Mitzri to Mitzri. In other words, he's playing leapfrog with the Jewish houses, right? And jumping onto the Egyptian houses. And I think I read it once in the writings of Dr. Aviv Zorenberg, who said, you can't jump slowly, right? You can't, if you're kofet, you can't jump slowly. You can't skip like medaleg. Dilug means skipping, leapfrogging. You need to take a run up. You need to, in other words, Pesach indicates speed. The matzah is about the speed. They're told to eat it quickly. And this is not, again, not by default. It's not they happen to come out, the bread happened to not have time to rise. They were told already the night before, eat this flat bread. So I want to try and investigate what is happening with this notion of the speed. Why is matzah this fast food? What is this notion of the chipazon of Mitzrayim? So that's stage 1, making the case that the exodus from Egypt is really a hurried affair. And this is a sort of a central motif. So how are we going to explain it? I'd like to give maybe 3 or 4 lenses to understand it, 3 or 4 perspectives. The first one you will see in source number 3 here, the Ibn Ezra, where the Ibn Ezra tries to explain what's going on and why it is that we are in such a hurry. And he says it's almost, how should I say it? It's functional. What do I mean by that? Let's take a look at source number 3. He says, but if you go from in the Hebrew, it's from the bolded bit. The tam b'chipazon shelo yitakvu, that they shouldn't get stuck behind. V'yumaharu lo'ochlo lifnei bo rega hamashchit, because they need to eat the korban pesach before the moment when the forces of destruction come. Shivsach Hashem petach. Al kein tziva Hashem liotot eish, and that is why they were told to barbecue the meat, to roast the meat, litbashel mehira, because that's the quickest way for it to cook. V'chein amru avot hakodoshim eino ne'echol al chatzot ve'eino ne'echol ela sali. So what's happening here? Apparently, the reason why we have to eat so quickly, according to Ibn Ezra, is we have to eat the Korban Pesach, and we have to do our cholot before the midnight hour. We know that we were told to paint the doorpost with the blood of the Korban Pesach. But apparently, according to the Ibn Ezra, at any rate, it's not just the doorpost that we have to paint, but we have to actually undergo our religious obligations. You know, Chazal say that in order to be Zochet Yetziat Mitzrayim, we had to do Dam Milah and Dam Pesach. You know, in Rav Soloveitchik's Kol Dodi Dofek, right, the covenant of fate, covenant of destiny, Dam Pesach, Dam Milah, and therefore we have to have eaten the Pesach before we leave. So Tam B'chipazon, because what will happen, you know, some families will start a little bit late, so they'll be, you know, spending their time. People will say, I want to pack first and then I want to eat. Right, so in order that we should, Batam b'chipazon, says the Ibn Ezra, shelo yitakvu, don't mess around. Make sure you eat it lifnei boreg hamashchit, before the midnight hour, the hour of destruction. Shivsach Hashem ala petach. Make sure not only have you put the blood on the doorpost, but you've eaten the korban pesach, and that's why b'chipazon, don't dilly dally, don't mess around. So according to Ibn Ezra, it's very functional. Chipazon isn't a sort of like ideological motif, but chipazon rather is something that we do in order to ensure that everything is in order, we've fulfilled our religious obligations, and that Hashem will indeed protect us rather than destroy us. And interestingly here then, the chipazon is directed to Hashem. So that's view number 1. It's functional, and it's there in order to ensure that we do our religious obligations. But now I'm going to switch to page 2, and we are going to look at the Tzidkat HaTzadik, a very beautiful text by Rav Tzadok HaKohen Milublin. And this is actually, interestingly enough, Siman Aleph of the Tzidkat HaTzadik. And this is what he says. He's going to take the notion of chipazon, the notion of speed, and essentially, you know, I'll say it and then we'll read it. He's going to say that the notion of speed is not so much the speed, but it's a matter of, I said before that you've got to sort of take a run up in order to get a certain amount of velocity, in order, like a plane needs to go on, you know, build up speed on the runway in order to take off. He says, we indeed need to build up a lot of energy in order to free ourselves from our routine. Let's read what he says. The first thing when you want to start serving God, it needs to be hurried. Like we found in Egypt, he says, in all subsequent Pesachs, how do we eat? We eat leaning, reclining, b'nei chorin. We don't eat in a hurry. Why that year did we have to eat in a hurry? Because, you know, if you want to get up for Shachrit, what do you have to do? You have to jump out of bed. you can't just assume that you'll sort of take it easy. You'll never get out of bed. You have to jump out of bed. You know, it's always difficult to get out from under the comforter, from under the quilt. We're sort of cozy and warm, and how many times do we press the snooze button? But if we press the snooze button, we'll miss Yetziat Mitzrayim. So he says, this is true about anything in Avodah Hashem. Let's say, I mean, we all know this, right? You want to, I don't know, you want to start exercising. So it's difficult. Who can be bothered? But you need to push yourself and to really do it. So he says, anything in Avodat Hashem, if I want to start doing Mishnah Yomi, if I want to start, you know, being makpid about something that I hadn't been makpid about before, how am I going to do that? I have to do it b'chipazon. And he's going to explain why. So again, when you start serving God or doing something in the service of God, it has to be rushed with a certain amount of propulsion. That's exactly what we did in Egypt, which was eaten in a hurry, unlike Pesach Dorot. Why? And here he explains the critical thing. When we begin something, we have to we have to pull ourselves away from all of the comforts of the world, the tavot ha'olam. In other words, there's a certain inertia. You need a certain startup energy. Tzarich lishmor harega. You have to seize the moment, or carpe diem, seize the day. Right? Lishmor harega shemitorer baratzon. The minute you feel the impetus, seize it. V'lachpoz al oto rega. And to run with that energy. Lemaher, quickly, latzeit mehem. And do it. Right? Nike, just do it. Ulai yuchal. Maybe you'll succeed. And then take it slowly. In other words, a person wants to make a change, make that change. And then once you've already taken the leap, you can take it slow. Now, by the way, he's saying that as sort of a model. He's saying Pesach Mitzrayim becomes the paradigm, and this applies to all areas of Avodah Hashem. But I want to say something about the moment of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Maybe I'll share with you a family story, right? My family, before the Second World War, lived in Frankfurt am Main in Germany. They'd lived there for several generations. And it was before, you know, it was during Nazi Germany, 1938. In fact, my family was still in Nazi Germany for Kristallnacht. Even my great-grandfather had been sent to Dachau, and they actually complained, and he actually got out. And the day they got out, they managed to send him out the country. And that night, the SS came looking for him. My grandfather was out of work, and he came to England to look for a job. But in England, there was also a recession, a depression. And therefore, he sent a message home. I'm talking about January 1939. January 1939. He sends a message home. I'm from London to Frankfurt. I can't find work. I'm coming home. Coming home. And his family sent him back a telegram to London. Don't come. We got exit visas. We'll meet you in Switzerland. And that's the reason I'm here today. Because all the rest of the family were murdered in the Shoah. And my family survived because he didn't go home. Because that moment they got exit visas, they left. I'll put it very simply. What is the chipazon? The chipazon means you get a chance to leave. You've got a window of opportunity. Leave now. You never know when that window will close. You never know when the window will close. This is true about so many situations. It's not only true about the Second World War. It's true about Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? And then just a few minutes later, that Paro hears Ki Barach Ha'am, and he starts chasing them down. Why does it have to be b'chipazon? You know why? Because it's very difficult to leave Egypt. I go back to the Tzidkei Tzaddik, right? You have to break your ties of worldly desire. My grandfather lived his entire life in England after the Second World War as an immigrant. He always had a strange accent, and he never had a particularly good job after he came. He was always sort of one of those sort of like not particularly successful immigrants. And I remember I think it was his 70th birthday, my parents and all the brothers and sisters bought him a book about the Frankfurt community. It was like a very expensive book about the Kehillah. And I remember when he picked up the book, he had tears in his eyes. And I was a little boy, and I said to him, Opa, I said, why are you crying? Are you crying because the Nazis killed your father? A very undiplomatic thing to say, but which a 6-year-old can say, or a 7 or 8-year-old. I don't know how old I was. And you know what he said to me? He looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he says, no, that's not why I'm crying. I'm crying because it was so good there. Germany was always the place where he was successful. England was always the place where he was an immigrant, and he had a hard life. Tzarich, you need chipazon. He would have gone home. How am I still alive today? Because hatchala l'natek atzmo mikol tavot olam, and that is the pshat of chipazon. Why is the motif of Yetziat Mitzrayim speed? Get out now, because tomorrow you might not get a visa. Tomorrow you might not be able to get out. So now, are you willing to leave Mitzrayim? And that was a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do, because however much the Egyptians enslave you, Egypt is home. And you know how I know that? Because all the way through the Midbar, they say, we as a Mitzrayim chinam. Let's go back to Egypt. They want to go back to Egypt. Why? Egypt was so good. Egypt was home. It's the familiar. In Egypt, we didn't have funny accents. Everywhere else in the world, we're going to have a funny accent. I'm always going to be the guy with an accent who doesn't quite get it. I say that as an ole. Okay? So the first, if you want, the Ibn Ezra said it's functional, it's for God. Here, this is not for God. This is for Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael need the chipazon. When we eat our matzah, what's our mindset? We're thinking fast food. You know why? Because we need to get out fast. Because everything, the theme of the evening is get out, get out, get out. Because if you stay there one extra moment, if you stay there, you'll just go back under the quilt. Because ultimately, whatever they do to you, Egypt's home. Okay. So this is kind of tzaddik. I think there's some powerful stuff there. I think there's powerful stuff about, and if you want to take it in a broader sense in terms of Avodah Hashem, we all find change difficult. We've grown up a certain way. Sometimes in our minds, we realize we should be possibly living life a little differently, right? We should be living life maybe in a different place. But you know what? Our upbringing is so familiar. Our familiar is so comfortable. To make changes is hard. Says Sikat Tzaddik, chipazon. That's the only way forward. Okay, that's explanation number 2. Explanation number 3, I want to explain with the help of reading through the Perek, source number 6 here, chapter 12 in Shemot, and then we're going to look at a beautiful Sfat Emet. So here's the second theme, the third theme of Chipazon, and I want to ask the question which I asked before. Really? The bread didn't have time to rise? What do you mean the bread didn't have time to rise? They spent a whole day on the journey. Why didn't the bread rise? So let's try and understand. And the real question is going to be, when did the bread not rise? I'll try and explain. So let's put ourselves in the night of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Let's go back to Egypt and let's understand what were the people expecting and what happened. Source number 6. Here's Moshe's instruction to the people. Olakachtem agudat Ezov. Olakachtem agudat Ezov. Utzvaltem b'dam asher basaf, v'gartem al hamashkot al shtei hamezuzot min adam asher basaf. So you've got to paint the doorpost with the blood. Here's the critical thing. V'atem lo teitzu ish mi petach beito ad boker. Bit like Corona, right? Don't leave your house. Don't leave your house till the morning. ועבר השם לנגוף את מצרים, וראה את הדם על המשקוף, על שתי המזוזות, ופסח השם על הפתח, ולא ייתן המשחית לעבור בתיכם לנגוף. Stay in all night. There's danger lurking in the street. When are they allowed to leave their houses? In the morning. In other words, everybody expects to be at home, packing, till what time? 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. They're expecting to open their front doors. It's light, and they will leave. They've got all night to get ready. In other words, they're probably eating the Korban Pesach till midnight, but from midnight till 6 a.m., that's when everybody gets a chance to pack. That's when somebody decides to make the sandwiches and all of that. Okay, got it? Good. Pasuk Chavtet. Vayi b'chatzi alayla at midnight. V'Hashem yikachor b'chor b'Eretz Mitzrayim b'chor Paroi Yoshev al Kisar b'chor Hashvi. So Hashem does makat b'chorot. Pasuk Lamed. Vayakam Paro Laila hu v'chol avadav b'chol Mitzrayim. Vatitza akagdola v'Mitzrayim. So Paro, it's amazing actually. Paro went to sleep. Paro was asleep. I don't know. He clearly, I don't know. I won't dwell on that. Paro gets up, and it says, there was a tzaka gdola. There was a scream throughout Egypt. Can you imagine? So, I don't know, dramatic. In every household, somebody was dead. So, so I'm thinking, 12 o'clock, the midnight strikes, but Paro's still asleep and people die. It takes a few minutes for people to realize that people are dead. I don't know, 12:15 Paro gets up, 12:30 he gets up. He summons Moshe and Aaron. Well, they obviously weren't there, so I don't know, what time did Moshe and Aaron come? At 1:30 a.m., and he gives them their expulsion orders. Kumu tzu'u mitoch ami, pasuk lamed aleph. Gam atem, gam bnei Yisrael, ulechu avdu Hashem kedaberchem. Pasuk lamed. So, what time do they leave the palace? 1:30 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. But look what happens now. Pasuk lamed gimel. Vatechazak mitzrayim ala am lemaher l'shalcham min haaretz ki amru kulanu meitim. So the Egyptians come and they push the Jews out of Egypt. In other words, everybody's still packing. It's 3 a.m., it's 4 a.m., it's 5 a.m. Everybody thinks they've still got time. And they hear a knock on the door. And now, get out. The Egyptians are saying, leave. Oh boy. Now the thing was that everybody knew they were going on a long journey, a 3-day journey. So everybody had dough, which was sitting there, and they were going to put it in the oven. Right? Where do you make bread? In an oven. So the bread was still rising, and I don't know, at 4 a.m., at 5 a.m., the mother of the family was going to put it in and make 5, 6, 7, 8 loaves of bread. Correct? Oh, I have to add, they had a mitzvah of Korban Pesach, but they had no mitzvah of chametz that year. They had to eat the Korban Pesach with matzah, but in Pesach Mitzrayim, there was no Isur chametz, no Isur chametz whatsoever. So look what happens. Pasuk Lamed Gimel Lamed Daled. Vatechezak Mitzrayim al am lemaher l'shalcham min haaretz ki amru kulanu meitim. Mitzrayim are knocking down the doors. Get out, Jews, get out. Pasuk Lamed Daled. And here's the pasuk which I think is very widely misunderstood. Vayisa amet b'tzeikor b'terem yechmatz. People took their batzeik before it had risen. Terem yechmatz, it wasn't yet chametz. Misharotam srot b'simrotam al shichmam. In other words, people grabbed their dough, which hadn't risen yet. What do you mean? When didn't it have time to rise? In the night. Because they were expecting to bake it at dawn and then to leave with fresh bread. In other words, am I making sense here? The bread hadn't risen when? Not as they were coming out. The bread hadn't risen in Egypt. And now look what it says. Lamed Zayin. Vayisu b'nei Yisrael miramsei Sukkota k'sheish meot elef raglei hakvarim levam meitaf vayofu et habatzek asher yotzim Mitzrayim ugot matzot ki lo chametz ki gorshu Mitzrayim v'lo yachlu et mamea v'gam seida lo atzu lehem. Let's pay attention to this pasuk, which is the proof text for matzah. They baked the batzek, which they took out of Egypt, the dough, into ugot matzot, to matzah cakes, which is, as far as we're concerned, it's pita, right? Pita. Ki lo ulafa. Ki lo chametz. They couldn't bake it as bread. Now, why couldn't they bake it as bread? Is it because it didn't rise? No. You know why it is? Because you can only bake bread in an oven, and they didn't have ovens because they were already in Sukkot. What did they have? They had a saj. A saj is like a metal plate. You light a few twigs under it. It gets very hot. Have you seen people make pitot before? Pitots, whenever you go to an archaeological site in Israel, you go to Susia, you go to Shiloh, whatever, over Chol HaMoed, they always have these things, not on Pesach, but, Sukkot. They have these pita making for kids, right? And they'll have this big metal sort of dome-like thing, and you roll out your dough, and then you slap it on, and within about literally 2 minutes, you've got pita, you've got lafa. So what does it mean? They had expected to make proper bread in Mitzrayim, in their ovens. But they left before they had a chance to bake, because they expected to leave at 6, 7 a.m., but they actually left at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Right? Now, how are they going to bake their bread? they're going to bake their bread on a saj, on one of these things, as pita instead of as bread. And the kids are saying, "Oh, why don't we have bread? We didn't want pita. We wanted bread." So again, they baked their dough. They made them as flat bread and not big fluffy bread. We'll come back to that. Why? Because they were thrown out. They were expelled. And they couldn't wait. In other words, they couldn't wait till what? Till the bread rose in Egypt, until they baked it in an oven. The gam seidat lo asu lahem. That's the phrase. And they hadn't prepared any other provisions. This was the bread they thought that would rise, and they'd make it into proper bread. So in other words, what is the symbol of the matzah? I want to try to sort of finesse this. It's not only about the speed, it's about something more precise than that. Matzah is the symbol not just of a fast redemption, but I'm going to say it this way, a premature redemption. Matzah is the symbol not only of a speedy redemption, but it's a redemption that I'm not quite ready for, that I haven't quite planned for, that has happened sooner than I thought, and I'm not ready. Now, by the way, we could make an argument that we're never ready. We're never ready. But you get my point. According to this, it's not that we came out so fast that the bread didn't rise. The bread was not risen. Of course, it spent a whole day in their backpack. It could have risen, but they couldn't bake it as bread because they had to bake it on the road. But the point was that they left before they anticipated it. They left prematurely. Now, why would this be an important point? Why is it important that their Yetziat Mitzrayim is premature? And here I want to turn to, on page 3, you see it on your screen, to the Sfat Emet. Okay? And here you see the Sfat Emet, and let's see what it says. The Sfat Emet is going to be looking at the beginning of Parshat Beshalach. If you remember, Beshalach, Vahi Beshalach Porat Ha'am, they're leaving, and then Hashem says to them, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yashuvu v'yachanu lifnei piachirot be'migdal uvein hayam. They turn around, and in fact, so much so that Paro says, Nevuchim heim ba'aretz, sagar alehem hamidbar. They're confused, they're lost. Okay? So what happens is they're going, let's say, in an easterly direction towards Eretz Yisrael, and then they turn back west. Why do they turn back? The Sfat Emet, let's read a bit of the Sfat Emet, and then I'll try and explain it. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yashuvu. Source number 7, the Sfat Emet. La'asher yatzu b'nei Yisrael b'chipazon mi'Mitzrayim v'haya shelo b'hadraga. Because Am Yisrael left Egypt in a hurry, it was not a gradual process. Lo b'hadraga. It was a leap. It was a quantum leap. It was not a gradual, step-by-step process. And anything that is so radical of change, ein zeh davar shel kayama, when you make such radical change, shelo b'hadraga, without intermediate steps, but you make a leap, a quantum, it is not stable. That's the best way I can put it. It is not stable. It's ruchu lashuv. Therefore, they needed to return. A bit confusing. So let's look at the next passage. The Sfat Emet frequently says something, and then in the next year he explains it better. So let's see what he says the following year. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yashuvu. Yesh lomar tamei inyan she'yetziat Mitzrayim hu neis shelo b'hadraga. Yetziat Mitzrayim is a miracle which has no intermediary steps. It's sort of catapulting you from slavery to freedom in one moment. V'hi l'sha'ah. And therefore it is temporary. V'ratzah Hashem yitbarach she'er gula zu b'atzmut Yisrael. But God wanted this to be something which would be permanent. I'm going to miss out the next 2 lines. And therefore, he commanded that they would ascend on their own. And that's why they cried. They saw such wonders in Egypt. Why were they afraid of the Egyptians? They realized that now they had to make the change. They had to put in the effort. Okay, fine. Let me try and explain. In the process of Yetziat Mitzrayim, were Am Yisrael active? Did Am Yisrael play an active role? Did they do anything really? Not really. Hashem did all the heavy lifting. Hashem did 10 plagues, and Am Yisrael stood by. Maybe they sort of laughed a little bit at the Egyptians, but Am Yisrael didn't undergo any process of change. Let's put it this way. Anytime somebody makes a major change, you know, sometimes people talk about in Israel, people flipping out. Somebody flips out. What's so bad about flipping out? The already somebody flips out, they'll flip back. Why? Because it is a miracle shelo b'hadraga. A person who makes gradual change. I used to always like it. I was an educator in Bnei Akiva. One of the things I loved about people who actually became more religious through Bnei Akiva was it was a process that happened over 10 years. No, there was no flipping. There was slowly a person started going to Bnei Akiva, they started singing Jewish songs, they started doing more, then they started coming on Shabbat, then they started keeping a bit of Shabbat, then they started davening, then they spent a year in Israel, then they started learning. Why is it stable? Because the person was undergoing a gradual, slow change. Radical change is always unstable. And the worry about radical change is, you know, this is true about revolutions, that you make such a big leap, but nobody's quite there because you've made a very radical change. You haven't, it's not incremental. It's something that you've done and sort of like, you remember the cartoons where you have, I don't know, whoever it is, running off the cliff, and they're off the cliff and they haven't even realized, they look around for about 3 seconds and then they drop. They haven't realized they're off the cliff, right? You don't realize where you are. In other words, we have a situation whereby Am Yisrael, by the way, what Sfat Emet is saying is that Am Yisrael come out of Egypt. They're physically out of Egypt, but they're not really there. Hashem's done all the work. So now they have to go back so that slowly they'll now take themselves out of Egypt. They will, in other words, Hashem brought them out of Egypt, but they weren't out of Egypt. Now Hashem, vayashuvu. Why? So that you can start going through the process of coming out of Egypt. By the way, this is saying something very interesting, which is that coming out of Egypt is such a radical change that Bnei Israel sort of haven't undergone the change, and it's almost bound to be traumatic. We have to come out quickly because otherwise we won't come out. That was the Rav Tzadok. But when we come out so radically, Bnei Israel haven't really undergone a transformation, and that's why the first generation basically it's a train crash. The first generation can't cope with the pressures of freedom. They get afraid from all different things. They get afraid at the Yam Suf, they get afraid with the Meraglim. And the ironic thing is that it's their children who go in, because it takes a generation to make the transition from slavery to freedom. It takes a whole generation. In other words, there's sort of a paradox. We come out of Egypt, but we're not quite ready for it. And we need to start now freeing ourselves. And that takes a lot longer. Right? Now, according to what I'm saying, there's something about, I'll go back to my explanation of the matzah. The matzah is about, not just about speed, it's about being premature. In other words, there's something about Yetziat Mitzrayim which is amazing. It was sudden. It was incredible. It was a quantum leap, but we got somehow left behind because we hadn't done the change. Hashem had made the change for us, but where were we in that whole process? Okay? And that is the challenge. Maybe if I can give if I gave an example before from my family leaving Germany, in order to explain this, I'll maybe give you another interesting contemporary example. Many years ago, I mean, you've all heard about the successes and failures of the Israeli waves of Aliyah. There was, of course, the Sephardic Aliyah in the 1950s, which had its problems and its sort of social fallout, and the Russian Aliyah in the 90s. And when the Ethiopians came also in the 80s, 90s, Israel said to itself, you know, we're not going to make the same mistakes we made with the Moroccans and the Iraqis and what have you. We're going to do it better this time. And you know what? It didn't work. It was still a problematic Aliyah. And there are lots of social problems to this day with Ethiopians. I know that because my daughter actually did Sheirut Leumi with Ethiopians. I once met somebody who ran a Merkaz Klita, a absorption center for Ethiopians. And I said to him, couldn't we have done better? Couldn't we have succeeded and learned from our mistakes? Do we never learn from our mistakes? And he said to me, Alex, you don't understand. And I said, what don't I understand? And he said to me, you cannot take somebody from a third world country, from a hut in Africa, and expect them to change in 1 second and to be successful in a modern Western state. He says, this is what happens. You bring people on a plane, and they come out of Africa, they come out of Ethiopia, and they can't speak the language, and they're not modern, they've got no education. And their kids, within half a year, are speaking Hebrew, and the parents still can't speak the language, and they can't read. So the kids start taking the parents around the supermarket. And then the parents want to instruct the children in their tradition. The kids turn around and say, well, your tradition's rubbish. Your tradition's nothing. I'm the one who guides you around the supermarket. Who are you to tell me not to go out on a Friday night? And they start disdaining their culture, and they start not listening to their parents, and their parents don't have any power. And anyway, the kid will say to their parent, well, you're just a janitor, you're just a cleaner in the school, and I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm going to be a doctor. In other words, the fallout between the generations is endemic. It's part of the process. You can take somebody out of Ethiopia, but they can't. Frequently, by the way, they can't make the jump. Their children will. I can make Aliyah, but my children will be the ones who are truly Israeli. Okay? So what I'm saying is there's something about Yetziat Mitzrayim which is not just its speed, not just its chipazon, but the chipazon points to something deeper than that. And that is the prematureness of the Exodus, the sense of the rawness of it all. And this is indeed what the Sfat Emet is saying here, that we had to ligbar ba'atzmeinu. The challenge of Yetziat Mitzrayim was not only for God to bring us out, but for us in order to make our way out ourselves. And this brings me to my last approach, which is a very beautiful approach, which I hope will also put the Omer in a slightly new light. And this is the approach of Rav Yoel ben Nun in this wonderful article. You can look it up, Chametz and Matzah on Pesach, Shavuot, and the bread offerings. Rav Yoel ben Nun is going to say something great. He says, we've got Chametz and we've got Matzah. We've got Matzah and Chametz. He says, well, let's imagine this, right? Don't look at Matzah so much as dough which hasn't risen. Let's look at it this way. How am I going to say this? Okay, we all know the symbol of Pesach is matzah. But let's look at it this way. Okay, good way to say this. If you have a dough, what does every aspiring dough want to become? Would a dough like to become matzah, or would a dough like to become big, high, fluffy bread? If I were a dough, I would want to become big, fluffy bread with volume and height. And you could even look at it this way. Imagine one of those freeze frame movies. Watch the dough, right, rise. And we have a freeze frame of the first bit of the dough, and we call that matzah. And after 7 weeks, it becomes bread. And you'll probably know that on Shavuot, we brought to the Beit HaMikdash shtei halechem. In other words, we could look at the whole Omer, the 7 weeks from Yetziat Mitzrayim to Shavuot, as a process of leavening, a process of rising, a process whereby we grow. Okay? We grow. By the way, of course we do. If you look at the stories from Yetziat Mitzrayim all the way to Har Sinai, we're developing the whole time. Just to give you one classic example, in our first war, at the Yam Suf, we all panicked and we didn't know what to do. In the last war with Amalek, we won the war. We went to war. Moshe held up his hands and the people had faith, but the people fought. The people weren't intimidated. Just a few weeks and they already had the confidence to fight back. So Am Yisrael is growing. They're growing in their mitzvahs. They're growing in their faith. They're growing in they really are. They're becoming something. So here's the very interesting thing. Well, maybe so in other words, matzah. Well, you know, let's read it from Rav Yoel ben Nun, source number 8. It's on your screen. He says the following: leaven, chametz, represents the final goal to which the farmer aspires from the start of his work. Bread, which is chametz, expresses the end of the successful process, the longed-for end result, the realization of that which he visualized at the start and which he pursued until he achieved it. That's chametz. Matzah, in contrast, represents a station in mid-process before the end result is achieved. In other words, it isn't flour, right? We actually start the Omer by being a korban Omer, which is literally flour. It's not flour. The flour's already been mixed with the water's already formed a dough, we've already baked it. But it's a station in mid-process before the end result is achieved. It represents a deficiency that is waiting for completion. What Rav Yoel ben Nun wants to say is that we go from the minute we get out of Egypt, what do we start doing? The very next day, we start counting the Omer. We start counting up. We start watching the bread rise metaphorically. You know what? The best comment that Rav Yoel Ben Nun says, and listen carefully to the way I'm going to say it, I hope I get it right, is Rav Yoel Ben Nun speaks about Yom HaAtzmaut. And he says the following. He says, anybody who doesn't say Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut, it is if they did not eat matzah on Pesach. But, he says, if you think Medinat Yisrael as it is at the moment is the thing that we've waited for, he says, that's as if you ate chametz on Pesach. Think about that. What's he trying to say? He says, why do we eat matzah on Pesach? Because we're redeemed. Hooray, we're free. But we're still at the beginning of a process. And that's why we eat matzah. It's not enough just to be free. The question is what you do with your freedom. It's not enough to be a free people. The question is what type of people will we become? And people building is a very long process. And why can't we eat chametz on Pesach? Because not eating chametz on Pesach means, I'm saying we're already there. All there is freedom. All we need to do is emerge from incarceration and from slavery, and then that's it. But that's not a Jewish view. The Jewish view is that freedom is not enough. We have to put meaning into our freedom. And that's why we eat matzah on Pesach and we don't eat chametz on Pesach. To eat chametz on Pesach would mean this is it. So that's what he says. And I'll read his last paragraph. Apparently, redemption is a prolonged, difficult process requiring patience and a great capacity for discomfort. The essence of the festival of Matzot, then, is a severe warning against the illusion of a complete redemption that happens in a single moment. In other words, says Rav Yoel, the reason why we eat this fast food, the reason why we eat chipazon food, why we eat this flat food, is to remind ourselves that, yay, great, we've come out of Egypt. We've had, if you want to have a Hotzeiti, Vitzalti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti, but we've still got to go 40 years in the Midbar. We've still got to get Eretz Yisrael. Even when we get to Eretz Yisrael, we have to build a society. We have to set up a Malchut. We have to build a Beit HaMikdash. We have to change the world. We have to Taken Olam B'Malchut Shaddai. We have so much to do, and there's so far to go. And if we felt that Yetziat Mitzrayim, yes, of course, we say Dayenu, we came out of Egypt. That's great, but we've got a long further to go. So let's try and summarize because our time is coming to a close. What I suggested was that I want to try and sort of probe this notion of matzah as this fast food. And I first established the fact that really even Pesach, the notion of leaping, indicates there's speed. And matzah is the fast food. And we eat it b'chipazon, and it's speedy. Our first approach was very functional, the Ibn Ezra. We have to get it in before midnight because otherwise God won't save us. Almost as if to say, we're going to mark ourselves, we're going to eat the Korban Pesach. And that's how we're going to, and that's one approach. Approach two, the Tzidkat HaTzadik. It's about us. If we don't seize the moment, if we don't grab the window of opportunity, carpe diem, we will never get out of Egypt because Egypt's too comfortable. We're too used to Egypt. It's very difficult to extricate yourself from a comfortable situation. Approach number three was I tried to say that there's something about the matzah, which is not just fast, and not just seizing a window of opportunity, but is also premature. There's something about Yetziat Mitzrayim which says that we're not quite ready. And I tried to develop that with the Sfat Emet to say, yes, indeed, we weren't ready. No one's ready. And the reason why we're not ready is because indeed Hashem redeemed us, but we didn't redeem ourselves. And what follows the process of divine redemption is that we have to undergo our own process of growing. And this led me straight into Rav Yoel Ben Nun, where Rav Yoel Ben Nun says that chametz represents a fulfilled process. Matzah represents the inception of a process or a process in mid-flow. And the reason why we do count the Omer is because we're celebrating. We have a Chag at the beginning, which celebrates our beginnings, and that's the Matzah Chag. We have a celebration at the end, Shavuot, which represents a certain degree of becoming, because there we make the covenant with God, and then we get the Torah. And in between, we're counting up, we're growing. And that's why we look at the Omer as a time of growth, right? And in that time, the bread, so to speak, is rising. And therefore the matzah doesn't just become a sign of speed. It doesn't become at the time of seizing the opportunity. It's not a notion of prematureness. It's a notion of recognizing that you are at the beginning of a long and winding road which leads through the Midbar and to Eretz Israel, and will end up in Yemot HaMashiach. We have this sense of Eliyahu Hanavi, of an anticipation of Benisan Nigalu, Benisan Atidim Higael. To a certain degree, we are still on that path from matzah to chametz. We're still on the path of national realization. And when we eat the matzah, we're saying, yes, we are redeemed, but we still have a long way to go and much more to build. So on that notion, I will just say, Chag Kasher V'Sameach. This is going to be one of the more strange Pesachs of our lives. We're going to be having very intimate Sedarim in a lot of cases without parents and grandparents. But I hope we will still manage to make it joyous. I hope we will still manage to really have a meaningful Seder. We should, or Sedarim if you are in Chutz La'aretz, and you'll try and pour a lot of energy, a lot of Torah, a lot of creativity into it all. And please God, we will indeed experience some element of Geula, hopefully the Mashchit, which Balin Gof, not in Mitzrayim, but in our world at the moment, will be held at bay. And indeed, we will experience Geula, the pendulum going back in the reverse direction, starting with this Nisan, and hopefully we will get back to normality as soon as we can. Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Thank you for tuning in to all of the students from this year, from all past students. It's great to see everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Pesach.
Thank you.